Penguin Random House Audio presents The Penguin Book of Cults, edited by Joseph P. Laycock, narrated by Robert Fass, Zura Johnson, James Lurie, Nancy Peterson, and Megan Trout.
Introduction. Ritualistic frenzy. Insane leaders wielding godlike authority over their flocks, minds enslaved by isolation and relentless propaganda, absurd doctrines and doomsday prophecies, sexual perversion, mass suicide. These are some of the ideas conjured by the word cult. It is a powerful word. Probably for as long as human beings have had religion, they have had a potent fear of the wrong kind of religion. This book explores both the history of religious experimentation and our ancient fear of the religious other. Humans are constantly developing new forms of religion, some of which have been strange and fantastic. As historian of religion Robert Orsi observes, there is no end to human religious creativity, a comment that has nothing to do with whether this is a positive thing or not. One would have to look to the staggering varieties and complexities of what humans have made of sexuality to find another site of such explosive and inventive activity. Examples in this book alone include accounts of drinking the blood of sacrificed cats, theories that we are living inside a hollow earth, and reports that space brothers from Venus are coming to redeem us from the threat of nuclear war. At their best, new and alternative religious movements can function like laboratories that explore new solutions to human problems. At their worst, they can foster patterns of abuse that last for generations or end in violence. Humans have adapted to keep a lookout for potential threats, and when viewing other people's religion, we have a tendency to focus on the bad and the bizarre while filtering out that which is harmless or even praiseworthy. There have been many cases in which fear of some newly discovered religious group creates far more danger than the group itself ever could. Socially, religion functions to provide a sense of communal identity, along with beliefs and rituals that orient people toward the world. To the degree that people value their religion and their community, it is understandable that they might fear the idea of a community that is bound together even more closely than their own, but that fosters the wrong beliefs and rituals. In some cases, the world of the cultists is imagined as a nightmarish mirror of society where normal values are inverted. Demons are worshipped instead of exorcised, incest is encouraged rather than banned, and babies are sacrificed instead of protected. This is disturbing enough if the cult is believed to exist in some far-off or barbaric land. But cults are often said to live among us, hiding in plain sight. Worst of all, they are imagined as spreading parasitically, using all manner of nefarious practices to corrupt otherwise good citizens into becoming agents of the cult. Women and adolescents are often thought to be the most vulnerable to cult indoctrination. When fears like this are stoked high enough, the results have included moral panic, the passage of draconian laws, mob violence, and the burning of heretics. In many countries, cults are regarded as a symptom of modernity. In the United States, cults are often described as a social problem that began in the 1960s. According to this story, Americans lost faith in their religious, political, and economic institutions, and this made them vulnerable to self-proclaimed gurus and prophets who exploited their anxieties and sold them false hope. By the 1970s, the fear of cults had become so great that parents whose adult offspring had joined alternative religions could hire deprogrammers who would abduct the wayward son or daughter and sequester them, often in basements or cheap hotel rooms, until they renounced their new religion. According to the deprogrammers, the abductees had never truly converted to a new faith, but were brainwashed by deceptive cult recruitment tactics. The deprogrammers were simply using good brainwashing to reverse the programming of the cult. Some of these deprogrammers were found guilty of kidnapping and false imprisonment, but were usually given token sentences. In the field of new religions studies, this period is sometimes referred to as the Cult Wars. But there were cults long before the 1960s. Sociologists have noted that certain conditions, such as rapid social change, tend to correlate with the emergence of new religions. But even in relatively stable times, religious innovation has been a constant throughout human history. As the selections in this book show, people were both frightened and fascinated by the idea of weird or coercive religions long before the 1970s. In fact, Western civilization was preoccupied with the idea of evil religions even before the advent of Christianity. What is a cult? The word cult comes from the Latin cultus, meaning worship, with the verb form meaning to cultivate, attend to, or respect. Cicero used the expression cultus deorum, meaning the honoring of the gods. In this original sense, cult referred to any form of organized worship. But in modern times, cult has come to mean something very different. As a label, it is pejorative and stigmatizing. But aside from this, it is not clear what exactly constitutes a cult. The definition shifts from person to person and from case to case. When asked to name the characteristics of a cult, people might list an infallible leader who can never be questioned, social isolation in a compound, or deceptive recruitment tactics. But groups can still be branded as cults without possessing any of these features. When I examine this problem with my students, we watch a news clip from the 2012 U.S. election cycle in which Mitt Romney, a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as the LDS Church or the Mormon Church, sought the Republican nomination for president. At the Conservative Value Voters Summit, Pastor Robert Jeffress, a Southern Baptist, urged Republicans to nominate someone else, stating, "Mitt Romney's a good, moral person, but he's not a Christian. Mormonism is not Christianity. It has always been considered a cult by the mainstream of Christianity." On the cable news show Hardball, host Chris Matthews asked Jeffress what he meant when he stated that Mormonism is a cult. Jeffress answered, "I wasn't talking about a sociological cult like David Koresh or Jim Jones. I'm talking about a theological cult. I mean, it's a fact. Mormonism came 1,800 years after Jesus Christ and the founding of the church." But Matthews continued to press. People hear the word cult, they hear Charles Manson, they hear Jonestown. Jeffress clarified that he did not mean that kind of cult, but that he preferred a president who is a Christian. Followers of the LDS Church would argue that they are Christians just as much as Jeffress is. Matthews answered that in this case, Jeffress's use of the label was actually just a prejudice, and that his position was no different than some Rastafarian saying, "I'm only going to vote for Rastafarians for president." Michael Barkin is a political scientist who has consulted with federal agencies following the FBI's disastrous standoff with the Branch Davidian group in 1993. He writes that the term cult is virtually meaningless. It tells us far more about those who use it than about those to whom it is applied. It has become little more than a label slapped on religious groups regarded as too exotic, marginal, or dangerous. As soon as a group achieves respectability by numbers or longevity, the label drops away. In other words, the label often has less to do with the group itself and more with how the majority regards it. Christianity was itself once seen as a dangerous cult. The LDS Church experienced extreme persecution during the so-called Mormon Wars of the 19th century, but has far more acceptance today. In the future, the cult label will likely drop away from this group entirely. But when Jeffress deployed the cult label to attack Romney's political aspirations, he was not just being imprecise. As Matthews pointed out, this label
Sample complete. Ready to continue?